I'm really excited and pleased to have Dave Berman here. He traveled all the way from Bend today, which was very kind of him, and his family came with him. Just like Sister Ray, David's had a lifetime, several lifetimes of different experiences, and I've had the chance to get to know him a little bit, and he's just one of those one-of-a-kind folks that you want to hang around with a lot. So, a Minneapolis city boy, Dave Berman, moved with his family to Lewiston, Idaho when he was in the 6th grade. There, he received, in the words of his Idaho uncle, $1 million education. Mind you, it wasn't the traditional schooling experience that his parents wanted for him. Instead, he learned about riding horses, rodeos, racetracks, and roping steers. Reflecting back, Davis said, "I was kind of skinny and not an athletic, coordinated kid, but matched with a horse, I was equal to anyone." As I said, he's lived several lifetimes of adventures, injuries, victories, and defeats, and much of it in Oregon, with stories and photos to back them all up. Hell, this guy even gave Haas Cartwright the ride of his lifetime. Maybe he might share that with us tonight.
Spent a few days in jail.
I'd also like to add one more accolade to his resume. In my mind, Cowboy Poet Laureate of Oregon. And here's one great passage from his writings about his own experiences that I wanted to read. "I got to thinking I was a pretty good gallop boy, and I thought I was ready to gallop on the track. The Roundup grounds in Lewiston had a small track and ran through the arena and behind the stock pens. Bruce Scott let me gallop a horse for him. The wind was blowing, and as we were passing the grandstand, headed through the big gate that closed the far end of the arena, the gate moved, the horse moved sideways, and I stood hard on the stirrup. The stirrup leather broke, and down I came, knocking the air out of me. I knew the horse would be coming around again, so I started to crawl off the track. Louis Grove, the Roundup grounds manager, jumped into the 49 Chevy Grounds pickup to drive out to pick me up, but didn't get stopped in time and drove right over the top of me. When they finally got me back to the barn, I was bleeding from splitting my head on a rock. Cliff just poured a little Absorbian on the split, and after I ran around the barn about 3 laps, it quit stinging and bleeding. I never got infection or needed stitches. So please help me welcome Dave Berman.
Well, this is quite a crowd.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when Tim first asked me to come up here and talk a little bit, I was a little bit nervous, and then he sent me that poster, and the ham in me took over, and I said, well, I'll be famous just like my uncle. My Uncle Dave had his picture on a poster, but it said $8,000 reward wanted for. And that was back in 1929, but that's another story. When I was a kid in Minneapolis, we used to come up here, up to Idaho on summer vacations to visit my mom's brother, my Uncle Tommy. And he always had a horse for us. Let's go to that horse with the 3 kids.
Oh, dear.
Horse with the 3 kids.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I can find that.
Some of those are not horses. Oh.
We'll get there yet. There it is. The first horse we had, now that shows my dad, my Uncle Tommy, Tommy's wife, my mom cut herself out of the picture, but that horse's name was Old Paint, and 4 of us used to ride him bareback all over the place. He was so tall we couldn't get on him, so we'd put an apple on the ground and stand over his neck, and when he raised his head up, we'd slide down on him. So we'd go up there on summer vacations for a while, and then we finally moved up there after I finished the 6th grade. So in the 7th and 8th grades, in the summertime, we'd go to junior rodeos, and that's where I kind of got interested in. But when I was rodeoing with my sister, our names were the same, so they used to run 2 barrel racers at a time, and if I beat my sister across the finish line, I'd get chewed out when I got home, so I got where I was setting up the horse a little bit, so I never won very much in the junior rodeos, but I had a lot of fun. Actually, I first came to Oregon. It was between the 8th and 9th grade I decided I was going. Well, like I say, when we were junior rodeoing around there, I thought my uncle taught me everything I needed to know about horses, but this guy in Clarkston who gave riding lessons, he wanted somebody to clean out his barn, and I thought, well, I'll make some money. So I went and cleaned out his barn, and he gave me riding lessons instead of money. But he always talked about his father-in-law, who had a big ranch in Enterprise, Oregon. So that summer I decided I was going to go up, and I'd never met him. I just knew approximately where the ranch was, and I knew his name. So I took off on my horse and rode up to Enterprise, and I wound up staying there the summer. And it was quite an experience, and it was many years later, after I'd gotten married and had 6 kids, that it was Truman Polson, who was the father-in-law. He was the one that got me my first thoroughbred horse and got me started at the racetrack. Both my youngest and second to youngest daughter both kind of retired from Oregon jobs. Well, Grace is semi-retired. She moved to Phoenix, so I guess she isn't an Oregonite anymore. Penny, when she was in high school, both kids went through high school in Warm Springs in Central Oregon, and she got interested in the grocery store business, and she went to work for Grocery Outlet. Well, later on, she got a store of her own, but they didn't have an opening in Bend, and she kept wanting to come back to Bend, but she had a store in California, and I went down there and helped her a little bit when her husband decided to get into the restaurant business, which didn't last too long. And when it was time for me to come back to Oregon, she says, "Dad, I want to buy you a business to retire with." Well, about a month later, I went and visited my oldest daughter in Nevada, and I seen at the end of a cul-de-sac 5 cottages, and one of them was for sale. So I called Penny up, and I says, "Penny, I found a business you can buy for me, and you don't even have to change the name of the sign." Well, the sign read, "Penny's House of Pleasure." I'm still working. Oh, she told me to keep this speech clean, by the way, when she told me. A little bit about rodeo. Actually, back in the mid-30s, the Rodeo Association was called the Turtle Association, Cowboys Turtle Association, and not too many people know that, but the reason they called it the Turtle Association, I've never seen a cowboy get too much in a hurry about anything. And then it became in the 40s, it became the RCA, which was Rodeo Cowboys Association. And then in about 1975, they started calling it the PRCA, Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. I think RCA Electronics kind of gave them some static, and that's why they had to do that. But back when I first got interested in rodeoing, usually the stock contractor came in and provided the stock, and his wife was the secretary, and it was about a $30 entrance fee, and you went in the day before or 2 days before, and you paid your entrance fee and you entered, and then they actually drew the names of the stock and matched them up to the cowboys out of a hat. Nowadays, if you're not in the top 50, you can't get to some of the rodeos, and you can turn out stock without having to have somebody take it out. And of course, there's a lot more money in it. I was in the top 15 in bull riding. I was in the top 15 in the nation for 3 months one time, and I only made $3,600. I've actually been in Oregon since the mid-70s. I came to Oregon with racehorse, and I wound up having the stables at Canada from about 1978 to 1986, and I've been here ever since. I went to, in the 9th grade, I used to sneak in behind the chutes at the Lewiston Roundup, and I'd always, the reason I picked bull riding, I was behind the chutes there, and there was a Canadian bull rider named Hank Abbey, and this goes back to the time I rode that horse to Oregon. One morning I stopped and did some chores to get my horse a feed of grain and me some breakfast, and the kid of the guy that owned the ranch, I call him a kid, I was 14 or 12, and he was in his early 20s, but he was interested in braiding rawhide, so that kind of got me interested in braiding. Well, then when I got with Hank Abbey, he was braiding bull ropes, and in them days you could buy enough rope to make a bull rope for $2.35, and bareback rigging cost you then about $35, and the bronc saddle cost $165. So I went with bull riding because I could afford it. Well, I went to a bunch of amateur rodeos, and I went up to Joseph, Oregon, and Joe Kelsey was the stock contractor, and his wife was the secretary, and I was still in high school then, and you kind of wonder, well, should I go to pro rodeos, because you figure the competition's going to be tough. Well, it was Joe Kelsey's wife that told me, if you go to a pro rodeo, they'll take care of you. They know how to handle the stock, and the stock's more experienced, and you're not going to get hurt. And then, besides that, old Joe Kelsey used to tell me, I like it when you come to my rodeos, you give my horses confidence. So, I entered Joseph Rodeo. It was my first professional rodeo. And I used to get up early and go down to the rodeo grounds and have breakfast with Louis Grove and his wife. And my dad never got up hardly before noon. But I went down there after the Joseph Rodeo, and the first thing Florence says to me is, did you see your picture in the paper? Well, there's a picture of me. Let's go. Yeah, that picture. There's a picture of me in the Lewiston Tribune. And I heard back up home, but I was too late. My dad already saw it, and he chewed my butt out for about an hour. Next day I went downtown everybody down in the stores downtown come out and says, "Your dad's sure proud of you. He's got that picture in his billfold." So, let's see here. Anyway, I rodeoed a little more, and this was in the 10th and 11th grades. And, the first, I used to, like I say, go to a lot of junior rodeos, and they always had calf riding and cow riding, but my folks would never let me enter that. And this is how I got to know Cliff Roberts. He got me introduced to the racetrack. And so my Uncle Tommy took me to Cliff's place because he always kept a cow around to practice roping because he liked to head and heel. And the cow had a couple of calves there, so they roped this calf, and of course I'd made my first bull rope, so they put me on them and they threw me off into the irrigation system. I broke both collarbones. And that's when I really got the bug. But I used to go down to the rodeo grounds, and they always had a practice horse or two down there, and all the other guys, I was still in my teens, and the other guys were in their 20s, and their dads were wanting them to get on stock, and I was trying to get on stock, and they'd never let me on. And the kids, they didn't want to get on. Their hearts weren't very big. But anyway, that's how I kind of got started rodeoing. Let's see what. Oh, okay. I'm going to get carried away here. I know. Oh, I went to Cambridge, Idaho, and I used to try to ride saddle broncs because that's the classic event of rodeo. And what I did was when we first moved to Idaho, my dad bought my sister and me and my cousin Susan form-fitter saddles from Hamley's and had our names on the stirrup leather. Well, I took my sister's saddle and my cousin's saddle, and Tommy knew a guy there at Hamley's, and I drove from Lewiston to Pendleton, and I traded them two saddles in and gave $50 and bought my first Association bronc saddle. And then in them days they sold new for $165. Now they're about $2,000. And anyway, I went to Cambridge and I was riding the saddle bronc, and somehow I guess I had a cold or something. But anyway, I hung on to the buck rein, and the horse threw me off, and of course when he just jammed me into the ground, well, I just laid there, and the guys I went up with, they come over and they started kicking a little dirt on me, and finally the ambulance crew come out, and they threw me in the back of the ambulance, and they just sat there. I was going to watch the rest of the rodeo, and I went up there with the Wilsons, and they had 5 brothers that rodeoed, and their mother come to the ambulance and made them take me into 15 miles to where the nearest clinic was, and they brought me around. And so they told me that I'd be lucky to ride again. And so I called my mom. I says, I caught a little cold and I'll be home in a couple of days. But then the doctor got on the phone. So my mom come and got me, and they took me up, and they decided I needed to be on Dilantin and phenobarbital, and I was an epileptic then. So then my dad decided to send me back to the fence to ranch school, which they sent me to in the 9th grade. He wasn't too sure I was going to graduate anyway. He was afraid I was going to take off and go rodeoing. So I went there, and while I was there, I talked one of the gals into her mother into paying my entrance fees at the Tucson Rodeo. And that summer when I come home, my dad had bought me a Volkswagen for graduation. they got my sister a fancier car. And so I went up to the corner gas station. Back then, gas was only 19 cents a gallon. And I charged up five-gallon cans full of gas to get me to Phoenix, because I wanted to go down there, and at that time, Freckles Brown was the bull riding champion, and Enoch Walker was the saddle bronc rider. And I talked this gal's mother into paying my entrance fees, which was $90 for all 3 riding events. And I made enough money to pay her back, but then I didn't have enough money to get gas to come home. And in them days, they had a payphone under the grandstand, you know. So I went and I called my mom, Colette, and I says, Mom, the judge says it'd be $50 or 30 days. My mom says, I'll see you in about a month, and she hung up the phone. So she did have kind of a sense of humor. I had to sell a pair of horse clippers to get home. Well then, I was still 19 when I got home, and of course I graduated high school then. And my uncle used to help Cliff. He run a bar there in Lewiston, work nights, but Cliff would take his horses to the rodeo grounds on Christmas Day and start training them to go to the track. And in them days, we'd go to Portland Meadows, then Long Acres, and then Spokane. Well, I'll tell you one little story about Tommy. He'd always go out in the morning and he'd pony horses along. They had the back gate that opened up onto the river, and there's a big sandy area there. So he'd take the pony horse and he'd take horses down there and pony them for exercise and bring them back, you know. And that's kind of how I got to meet Cliff. And Cliff had some horses in box stalls, but then he had 4 or 5 horses in tie-up stalls. And there's one horse called Long Oats. He was really a nice disposition horse, nothing wrong with him. But when he'd finish eating his morning grain, he'd like to step back to the end of the lead shank, so his butt would be out in the alleyway of the barn. And back then, Bill Wire run the rodeo grounds, and Tommy come up from the river, and old Bill Wire had a buggy whip, and he was whipping this horse on the heels to get him to stand, you know, move up in the stall. And Tommy put the thoroughbred horse away and tied up the pony horse. He went over to Wire and he turned him around. And when he got mad, he didn't blow up or anything, but he either whistle or start humming a tune. And he never said a word. He just humming. He broke that buggy whip up into about 100 pieces and threw it on the ground, got another horse and headed down to the river. Well, about that time, Cliff drives into the rodeo grounds, and Bill Wire goes up there and he says, Jesus Christ, he says, Tommy's in a bad mood this morning. And so Cliff asked him what happened, and he told him, and he said, oh, don't worry about Tommy until he gets poking you with that index finger and calling you Mr. Son of a Bitch. Then you better watch out. So anyway, I got well, we used to, after we take care of the horses in the morning, about 11 o'clock, we'd always go over a block away to Curly's, and there was a beer joint with a grill, you know. They had hamburgers and they had breakfasts, and we'd always eat there. Well, I got a job there, and pretty soon, well, I had to get a job. I had to pay my bar bill. I was only 19, but you know, in Idaho, you could drink beer when you was 20, but in high school, I was always the one they sent into the grocery store to buy the beers. So anyway, that year I was helping Cliff at the rodeo grounds, and he wanted me to go to Portland with him. And I didn't think I could leave because I didn't have my bar bill paid. So one morning we were sitting there, and we always had a street roll and stuff, and Cliff asked I can't remember the name of the guy that owned the place. He was from Canada. He said, go get Dave's tabs, and he paid all the tabs. So then I decided I had to go to Portland with him. So I went to Portland, and it's kind of funny because he had a, what's them trailers that look like an airplane? Airstream. He had a little Airstream camper, or trailer, you know, and he had a horse trailer, and I'd never seen anything like it before, but it had 3 horses abreast. So it was a pretty wide trailer, and then he had a ton truck, and he used to put 3 horses in straight, 1 horse sideways, so he'd have 4 horses in the truck and 3 horses in the trailer, and he'd hook this trailer behind the truck, and then he'd hook the other horse trailer behind. So we was like one of them truck trailers for 2 trailers, you know. And I, like I say, I was only 19. He put me behind the wheel, and to leave Lewiston, you had to, back then, Lewiston Hill, and that was a windy, steep hill. He told me to drive, so I drove. But I've never seen another horse trailer like that. Anyway, we got to Portland, and he always parked his trailer about a block away from Portland Meadows, and I stayed in the tack room. Well, everybody always gets a little bit of the cough or the croup or something there, you know, rainy nights and cold at night and damp all day. And so I got a little bit of a sore throat and cold, and he said, well, you go to the trailer tonight with us and sleep in the trailer. So I said, okay, and it was my job to give the horses their morning grain and to have the pony horse saddled before Cliff got there. Well, when I got over to the trailer, he took a big old tablespoonful of pine tar, put it on the back of my tongue, and then he wrapped plastic around my neck, put ferricin on it, wrapped plastic around it, and then put bandage around it to make a ferricin sweat. I was sweating all night. Next morning, I got up early and snuck off the track. I figured I better be cured. And, but anyway, we had a lot of fun. He was always buying horses off the schooling list at Spokane at the end of the year. And he bought a horse this one year called High Grady. And he was like 17 hands tall. And I used to gallop him. And Cliff put a lead chink on him and would sit on the pony horse and let that zip line out more and more as we, so I'd make a bigger circle. Well, oh, I know what I forgot to tell you that, you know, at the track you have to wear a helmet on the track when you gallop, and they want like $35 for them helmets then. So I went out and bought me a tin woodsman hat with a elastic chin strap. I thought it looked really neat. So I was wearing that, and this horse went to bucking with me, and that hat would go up like this and slam down on my head. And finally that chin strap broke, and the hat flew off in front of me, and I flew off the horse, and I buried my chin in that tin hat, put a dent in the tin hat. Cliff was laughing so hard he couldn't help me at all. When we went to the track, he bought me a regular gallop. The first time, and I've written some stories up. I've got a few copies if anybody's interested. And then if I run out, I'll give you my email address, or if you give me your email address, I can send them to you. But it's so anyway, I wound up. What's kind of funny now, Cliff was the grandpa. Clint was his son. Clint stayed at home and ran the ranch until Cliff died. Well, then Clint went to Portland and Seattle And then Tom got into the business, Clint's son. And Tom's younger than me. And they were always at Seattle anyway for, 8 years there. They were trading off the training championships, you know. And in 1957, Cliff was leading trainer at Portland Meadows. And Edna, they put all the horses in Cliff's wife's name, Edna. And she was the leading owner, money-wise. And the total they won was $2,500. And then when Clint got up there, he kind of was king of the claimers, you know, and of course, they run for a little more money. And then now Tom still's training horses. As a matter of fact, he'll be up here this summer. They've changed the meets around, and he trains as an assistant trainer to Jerry Hollendorfer, who is a record holder. But of course, Jerry Hollendorfer had like 300 head of horses to run, you know. And of course, he doesn't do it all himself. He never, but it's quite a generation there, and it's a lot of difference in what they. Matter of fact, a couple of years ago, they got a hold of a pretty good horse called Sure Do, and they thought he was going to make it to the Kentucky Derby. Well, he did make it to a $1 million race. He ran fourth in it. And so that's the class of horse that Tom trains now. And when I first went with Cliff, he never let me gallop horses on track. He'd let me pony them and take them to the gate. Well, when we got to Spokane, I thought I could gallop. And they were getting $1 a head to gallop. Well, Cliff says, I'll set some horses up for you to gallop. And he'd meet me at the gap. I'd get off one horse and on another. I galloped 32 head one morning, and that's in a couple of hours. And after that, I says, I don't think I want to gallop anymore. But he gave me the $32. That was pretty good money back then.
You want to talk about the behind the scenes of the track?
Oh yeah, I always thought that on the backside, you know, there's so many industries that make money off of the racetrack. You have the people that run the restaurant, you have the people that provide the feed and the bedding, you have the jocks agents, you have the valets for the jockeys, you have, and with the way of course, jockeying, they really watch their weight and that, and they always have trouble there. So all the elements of a good soap opera is back there. I mean, it throw Dallas out of the. And I always wanted to write up a series and have that. Now they did have a while back. They had Gary Stevens and Mike Smith and that on a reality thing, but it didn't show the whole thing. It was pretty well. It was pretty well for the show, and it didn't show how the. And there's a lot of good things that happen behind the scenes too. So, and I always wanted to do that.
You want to run through some slides?
Oh yeah, we got. Oh yeah, that's me looking pretty good there in the next picture. Now. Over there on the grandstand is the high school band, and they drum for the 8 seconds. Well, that horse threw me through that drum set. And, of course, they had my address. Well, the school tried to bill me for the drum. I said, no, you're taking your own risk sitting that drummer up there. And Yeah, I think I won that one. I looked pretty good there. Oh, that was taken at Lewiston, and that was the only time I could rodeo in my hometown rodeo because I was old enough to sign the release. And that was another time at an amateur rodeo at Lewiston, and I don't. Oh yeah, this was at Dayton, and I rode this boat for quite a ways out there, but the next picture will show you how I got off.
How do you survive?
What's next? Oh, that's just the practice horse. I think I broke my ankle on that one when I got off, though. Oh, hey, that's Rick. That's my cousin. I used to get him in all kinds of trouble because he's a couple of years younger than me, and I'd always con his mom into hauling us someplace to a practice session and get her to pay our entrance fees at the amateur rodeo. And somehow or other, I talked him into getting on a horse at Spalding, and they got a picture of him, and he hid it from his folks for a long time, but I think they forgave him now. That's at an amateur rodeo. And that's the last rodeo I competed in at Ogden, Utah. And my oldest daughter, she was so mad at me, and so I decided to quit rodeoing then. That was just at an amateur place there in the Sultan. Oh, and this is my Uncle Tommy on Lum. I got a story in that about Lum. He used to run that bar at the Golden Spur Bar. And Wally Halsey used to come in there. And back when they first got this horse, there was a drought in Texas, so they sent up a railroad car full of horses. So they bought a whole railroad car full of horses. And he came out of that, and he'd been raced. He was, I think, 4 or 5 then. He's 23 in that picture there. And Tommy owned him 5 or 6 different times during his life. And when we moved up there, my dad bought Lum from whoever had him and gave him to Tommy. And then Tommy had him ever since. But he was quite a horse. And that's the last picture I have of Tommy and Lum together. Tommy passed away. Well, Lum passed away. And a week later, Tommy passed away. So I always like to think that they met each other up there. And that's Cliff's wife and me. The first year I worked for Cliff, so I think I might have just been out of high school then. And then this is about 10 years before, but that's Cliff here, just to show you what he looked like.
That's your cousin?
That's my cousin there on the horse, and Cliff's boy Kelly. Oh, when...
you want to go back?
No, we're okay. When we were at Seattle, they had this 72-ounce steak with all the trimmings, and if you ate it all, you got it. So, and I was a skinny kid then. I used to only weigh 125 pounds. So Cliff set me up for it, and I think Cliff's son ate the 72-ounce steak once. And I think you had an hour and a half and you could make 1 or 2 trips to the bathroom. So anyway, Cliff takes me off feed and water the night before, and he makes side bets with everybody at the track. We made about $125. I ate it. That's Clint there. And then at Portland here, they had a pancake house just around the corner from the track. And this was way back when it was pretty cheap to eat. Well, Cliff would always buy me breakfast. We went in there once and they had eggs and ham and potatoes. No, eggs and ham. They didn't have potatoes. They had something else. And all the hotcakes you can eat for $1.25. So, and I mean, they made the big hotcakes. So, I ordered that, and Cliff says, well, bring him a dozen hotcakes to start out with. You know, they only usually start out with 3. So I ate all of that, and got done with that, and Cliff says, well, bring him another, and bring all the sides with it. So then I ate the second dozen, and he was going to order me some more hotcakes. I said, just make it 6 this time. So we ate that, and the next morning we went in there, and the waitress says, I'm sorry. She says, the cook says you can have anything except that hotcake special. But, and on this deal, you was talking, when I was still going to private school there in Tucson, it was during that time the Bonanza was big, and they had Lauren Green and Horace Cartwright and Little Joe. Nobody liked Little Joe. He's kind of arrogance, but they all liked Gene Autry because it used to be. Let's go to one of them where it shows the cowboys in front of the chutes. Yeah, keep going. There. See, all the cowboys used to be lined up along the fence, and Gene Autry would come out there, and this is when he was older too, and sit with us, and we'd just pass the bottle back and forth. And then he'd say, all right, I'll be right back, guys. I got to get up and sing a song or two, but I'll be back. And anyway, it was at Tucson, and Hush Cartwright had broken his shoulder, so he was sitting on a wagon with 4 horses hooked to it, and he had his arm in a sling, and the guy that was supposed to drive the 4 horses into the arena didn't show up. And I was kind of young and cocky, and I volunteered for the job. I'd never driven 4 horses before, but Tommy told me all about it, you know. Well, they opened that gate, and I went, yeah! And them horses took off like thoroughbreds. We made 5 rounds. I looked over at Cartwright, and he's white as a sheet, and I said, don't you bail off of this wagon and tip over for sure. And he was actually shaking like this, and he took 2 guys to get him off the wagon. He stood in front of the microphone, you know, and they had some talking back and forth, and I think Lauren Green sung a song, I can't remember. But he wouldn't get back on the wagon. He walked out of the arena. But he was a really nice guy to talk to.
There we are.
Oh, yeah, that was the first rodeo, or first horse I ever took to the paddock for Cliff, and he won the race. And here at Portland, you used to go up to the back gate, and the horse would go around the track that way to the paddock. Well, Cliff was always on the pony horse, and I handed him the lead shank. And as he took off, I was in between the 2 horses, you know. As he led the horse forward, he had a piece of straw in his tail, and I just reached up, was going to get that straw out, and he hit me with both hind feet, knocked me into the guy behind me. I knocked him down into the mud, and I'm bent over and can't get my air, and Cliff reaches down, grabs me by the arm, throws me up behind him, and takes me to the paddock. And when I got back to the tack room, I opened my shirt, and I had 2 hoof prints on my chest. You could see the nail holes and everything. And then, these are Yeah, this is a horse I had when I had the stables. Penny actually was the owner of the horse, and he ran second there at Yakima. The next time, it's kind of funny. Is there a win picture of Ellis in there?
There.
No. We'll go back to. There it is. This was the next time we went up to Yakima. That's Penny holding the horse. And so Penny and I went up there, and my wife and Grace were supposed to stay at the stables. Well, I take the horse to the gate, and when you come back, you ride into the paddock there with your pony horse and wait for the horses to go around, and it's all chain linked off. And so here comes Beth and Gracie, and the race has started. And I says, by the way, I bet $100 across the board on that horse, and he's dead last. He's coming around the clubhouse turn, and he wound up winning the race. And I thought Beth was going to tear down that chain link fence to get to me. But if you look at her face there in the win picture, she's trying to figure out $100 across the board. I made more money betting on the horse than I won in winning the purse. But you can tell she's trying to figure out how much money I might have won. But anyway, that's, oh, yeah.
You gotta tell this story.
Oh, that was at Salem at the State Fair. And I think I got mad at the guy that was going to jockey. And I crawled on the horse. And we ran second there. And when I got all done, the stewards took the purse away from me, the second place purse, because I was 10 pounds overweight. And I didn't have a jockey license. I had a gallop license, I didn't have a jockey license. And those were just some second. Oh, I won 2 races with this horse a week apart at Boise. Now this guy that's standing over here, he's the owner of the horse that ran second in the race. He says, I got to get in the win picture. So he got in my picture. And you can tell Penny and Grace are pretty small there.
You want to take some questions, or?
Yeah. Talking about braiding, I still do some braiding. I make belts and headstalls and reins if anybody's interested, and I got some cards and I got some of them stories. And if you'd be interested, I only got a few of them stories, but I could, if you leave me your email address, I can send you them. They're kind of interesting to read.
They're really fun. So, first of all, around. Anybody have questions? There in the back?
Yeah.
How many bones did you break when you were in the rodeo?
How many did we break? That would be.
Oh, I broke my leg when I was pretty young, I think in the 8th grade, and they were always trying to get me to gain weight. Well, I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks, and then they finally put me in a wheelchair, and then they let me up on crutches, and my dad said he'd pay me $1 a pound for every pound I gained, so I kept throwing fishing weights down in my cast. And when they cut the cast off, they ruined the saw. Oh, they. they have at the races they have a little. It's like a hot shot, only it fits in the palm of your hand. They call it a machine, and jockeys will use it to kind of give their horse a little boost during.
Illegally.
Yeah, it's very illegal. Matter of fact, and I didn't realize it when Tommy was at Seattle. He always used Vicky Aragon and helped her win the title. And her brother, George Aragon, a few years ago, got caught using one of these, and they revoked his license for 25 years. Well, he's a 30-year-old. 25 years, he won't be riding anymore. But one time I was taking a horse to the gate there at Yakima, and the jockeys always want to know how their horse is going to react, so he had me dial him up pretty close, and he was going to try it and make. Sometimes the horse would stop instead of moving ahead, and he couldn't get the thing to work. He said, "This ain't working." Well, we go behind the gate, and there the starters having all the jockeys dismount to frisk him, you know. So he hands me them, and I got my pant leg tucked in my boot, so I dropped it in my boot, and that son gun went off. I'm taking my leg like this, and old Dennis says, "Well, we know where that one went." I had black marks on my ankle where that thing hit me.
Other questions?
You ever get into any bar fights, and if so, what about?
Oh, just recently. I got sticking up for this gal in the bar, and now I got false teeth, you know. And I get kind of loud and yakking. And my upper plate kept falling down. This guy got laughing so hard, he says, I was going to take him out in the parking lot. This guy got laughing so hard, he says, I can't take you out there. You can't even keep your teeth in your mouth. Yeah, I've been in a few bar fights. It was really good when I had my arm in a cast, because I could bang them over the head. I'd go into after the weekend, I'd go into the dock and have to get another layer of plaster put on my cast. Yeah.
Do they still have those races and those racetracks?
Oh, yeah. It's changed quite a little bit. Yakima Meadows is shut down. Salem is down to just, I think, the fair meet. It used to run about 30 or 60 days. Bay Meadows is a shopping mall, and so it's really too bad too. Cause when Sundowns over there at Tri-Cities used to, I spent a year there once for 2 months. It got pretty hot.
Portland's still going now, right?
Yeah, Portland, and now, like I say, they have a summer meet, and then they go into their fall meet, and there's so much now. At Portland, you used to have the people come to the grandstand. Now the grandstand's empty, but they do the off-track betting, and that's how the track makes money, is on the handle that they handle. I just wish they had, but it takes a lot of horses to make a meet go. When you figure you got 8 to 10 horses in a race and you got 10 races a day, it takes quite a few horses on the grounds to make it go. But Portland's barns, matter of fact, Tim and I are going over there tomorrow morning. Portland's barns has been laid out the same ever since I started coming. I'm getting pretty old now. That's quite a while back.
There's a question over here to your right.
Yeah.
Yeah, was there any special trick to make it through a 4.5 pound steak?
Well, Cliff had his pistol with him. So if I didn't eat it all, that kind of... He took me off feeding water, though, 24 hours before, well, 12 hours before I went to eat. And he says, just have it raw if you can, because it'll slide down easier. Yeah.
What's Cliff's last name?
Roberts. It's Cliff Roberts, Clint Roberts, Tom Roberts. And now, in case they ask you a trivia question, Tom Roberts was the last one to win the most leading trainer at Golden Gate before Jerry Hollendorfer. So if you ever get asked that question on Trivia Show, you will have the answer.
What's the most you ever won at one rodeo?
I won, I think, about $480 in one event. Yeah. That's back when the entrance fees were only $30, $35. Now they have sponsors and the money's so good. If I had enough Jack Daniels in me, I think I'd go try it again.
So maybe later. What's the most famous horse that you groomed or you brought to the gate?
I took Seattle Slew to the gate one time. I think it was for the Portland Mile.
What was he like?
He was ornery. Let's see, there was another horse. I took Gary Stevens to the gate. Well, I'm so old that I remember Gary Stevens looking for horses to ride in Idaho at small tracks.
He's a Hall of Famer now?
Yeah. He was in a couple of movies, and he was in that reality thing, Mike Smith. There was one kid, and he was a pretty good jockey. His name was Ron Hansen. And so he had a lot of mounts there, and he'd ride every race, and I was ponying a lot of horses to the gate then, so I'd invariably pony him. And the first couple of races, he was pretty good, and next couple he'd start singing, and he sings worse than I do. And by the end of the race, by the last race of the day, I don't think he knew whether he was a foot or a horseback. But he sure could ride.
The question way back there.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about the favorite buckle you've won? Or do you have a favorite buckle you've won?
Well, a lot of barmaids have them buckles. I won 4 or 5 buckles. I think my youngest daughter stole the last buckle I won. She's got it. Let's see, I can't remember now. I won the bull riding at, did I win that at no, Tucson one year. And I split second and third. That year that I made $90 back, I split second and third in the bronc riding, and I think there was a ground split on the bull riding, and I got thrown off my saddle bronc. So it was in the bareback riding. I either split 4th and 5th or something. I only won $90, and that was just enough money. Well, no, I think I won a little more than that, but I did booze it up a little. I still didn't have any money to drive back home.
Any other questions?
Did you ever compete in the Pendleton Roundup?
a number of times before it got really big. Now you got to be in the top 50 in order to even enter it. Oh, I got to tell you a story about Rick. Like I said, I got this Volkswagen when I graduated. So I had this Volkswagen, and I'm parked behind the chutes at Pendleton. Rick comes over to see me. Well, I overtrained a little bit the night before, and I got my feet out one door and my head out the other. And they're calling for me. They got my horse in the chutes. I said, Rick, you always wanted to ride. I said, go over there and get on that horse for me. And I had them all saddled and everything. So he got on the horse, and they got his picture in the paper, but they put my name under it.
How'd you do? How'd he do?
I think he got filled up. Can we go to that one picture again of Rick?
Which one? Oh, yeah.
Wild Louie.
Let's see where that was. There?
No. There. That's one of the times I got. Oh, we went to Chief Joseph Days one day, or one weekend, and I was supposed to, he's a couple years younger than me. I was supposed to be watching him. So they always had a carnival around. And I'm waiting in line here trying to smooth talk a couple of gals, and Rick disappears. Well, we were sleeping in the behind the chutes, in sleeping bags and that. So I'm sleeping, and he never did show up. The next day they have a parade, and here comes a white Cadillac with the Queen and 2 princesses, and he's sitting right amongst them, stringing the rope with a big old 10-gallon hat on. I said, well, he lucked out better than I did. I had to sleep on the ground last night.
All right, folks. Any last words, Dave?
Oh,
Go ahead.
if you don't mind, I'll tell you one more short story. We used to come up to Enterprise for a junior rodeo, and they had the Enterprise Hotel, which was 3 stories. And so we had room there at the hotel. Well, about 7 of us trying to crowd in there. And the guy got kind of mad at us, and I'd had just, well, I mouthed off to him, and he picked me up and threw me out the window. And and they had awnings over the windows on the first floor. And if I wouldn't have hit one of them awnings, I would have went splat, but I bounced off the awning and bounced out enough and hit the roof of a car, and that's the only thing that kept me alive. Anything else?
It's been nice having you.
Oh, this is my grandkids.
All right.
Oh, you don't need a selfie.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
That was really good.
He says to me, was that okay?
That was good.
Hey, thanks everyone. Oops, sorry. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.
Oh, there's lots left.